Welcome to Comic and Screen. My name is Sam. Usually with me here is Jason Book, but he has taken a little bit of a break because he's actually moving, so we're going to give him a chance to relocate and get settled in. So I'm going to cover this solo. I'm going to be talking about Batman issue 12. This is written by Tom King. It's part 4 of the I Am Suicide storyline, here moving into the rebirth era of Batman. And the art here is by Mikel Janin, and also Hugo Petrus and June Chung. And this issue has sparked a lot of discussion and some controversy, or at least debate online about it, so I wanted to just share my thoughts and review of the issue and the I Am Suicide storyline so far. Overall, I'm still enjoying the Tom King era on Batman. I look forward to the issues every time. It gives me a lot to think about. He seems to be weaving stories together in a complex and rich way, so I look forward to dissecting them. But he is, taking some creative chances, and we'll see how those pay off. And one of the biggest ones has to do with Batman's origin and Bruce Wayne's decision to become Batman. Some people are calling this a redefinition of the origin story. I don't think it's quite that. I think it's just a new layer added onto it that makes some sense, but maybe people haven't thought about it in that way before. So for them, maybe this is new, or maybe it's just the most explicit that it's ever been brought out. But that origin piece I'm going to kind of save to the end, but I'm talking about a few other things from the issue first of all. So I mentioned Tom King writing here on the Batman title, and I've been enjoying it. I think he's doing a really nice job of writing with layouts in mind. I read an interview with him last month, and he talked about how he's really trying to use layouts as part of what he uses in his storytelling. And he says, as a comic medium, those layouts and how you design things on the page is something really unique to the comic book medium. And he says, a lot of writers don't necessarily take full advantage of that, or artists necessarily. And he's trying to be very thoughtful about how the layouts can play into the story. And you can see that here. Issue 12, he goes with basically all the two-page spreads throughout the whole issue. And so he's kind of seeing, like, what can we do with these two-page spreads, and working with the artists to get different layouts moving across those double pages. Or sometimes just having, a two-page splash page, but then the action is moving throughout the page. So for me, it's been really fun to think about how he's using the layouts and to take them in, and it's been fun to visually kind of try to think about and take in the story that way. He's also, I think, done a nice job so far bringing in interesting settings, and particularly in the I Am Suicide storyline with Bane's terrain here, and having color and some geography and the water and various things that make it a memorable setting where you can have a rich story taking place there. And he's given it some memorable scenes, several memorable scenes already in this storyline, like here, Batman moving through in some kind of unbelievable ways through Bane's army. And in the last issue, the back-breaking kind of reinterpretation in this rebirth era, and Batman setting his back into place, very memorable. And then Bane's origin story with the water rising, very potent scene there. And even back in the original I Am Gotham storyline, starting off Rebirth, memorable scenes there, like in the first issue with the plane ride. Or to me, that's a sign of good writing when you put a scene out there that's a very memorable scene that jumps off the page that really sticks with you. Tom King also layers that with some kind of poetic verbiage that he uses, and he does sometimes try to really use language in careful ways, certain words, certain rhythms. And Tom King has been challenging himself to try to do that in a Batman book without relying on the inner monologue of Batman all the time. So minimizing or removing the inner monologue. Although here in issue 12, he finds a way to sort of have a Batman monologue through Batman's letter, which goes throughout the issue. So we do hear Batman's voice talking about, some things that he's thought about, some of his feelings and reactions and state of mind. So it's not a monologue of what's happening right with the panels, but it is, Batman's kind of inner voice speaking through that letter. But for me, it's been cool to see a Batman writer trying to take on those challenges and see how he plays out with it. And he's definitely put in some nice parallels between issues as well. Like issue 10 had the letter from Catwoman, and now issue 12 we have the letter from Batman back to Catwoman, so nice parallels between those issues, and I think it'll work really well in the trade when that comes out too. So some good stuff like that from Tom King that's fun to just think about and connect up. And then moving beyond Tom King to the art overall, and here with Janin, the art is looking really good. Colors are very vibrant, and they fit the scenes really well. And Janin is basically just doing a great job where, to me, the pages, the panels, they all look really solid. They draw me into the story. So a lot of kudos to that one, especially this issue. I basically was just really enjoying it all the way through. Really good stuff to look at. So top-notch art on this book for quite a while now, 12 issues in. And some cool things here with the action flowing throughout the page, like I kind of mentioned before. But a lot of kudos there goes to the artists as well, not just to Tom King for trying to write that way. So really cool art to take in. A couple problems though. So one problem I had with issue 12 is it seemed like a continuity jump. And I'm actually not really sure what to make of this because issue 11, I think Batman was like in the ceiling or in the vent right above Bane and Catwoman and Psycho Pirate. And so I was expecting him to kind of just drop down into the room. And at the end of issue 12, Batman does arrive at the feet of Bane, but I thought that he was only literally a few yards away from that instead of having to come from the ship through the water, then up the island, and then into the castle, and then to Bane. So I'm really not sure how that continuity works out for Batman to be so close to Bane and now having to take a whole issue to get back to that same spot in front of Bane. So not sure what to make of that. And then another thing I was going to mention is not necessarily a problem yet, but it could become a problem, and that's just to look to see if Tom King actually pays off the things that he's set up. Because I was expecting some of them to get paid off or to happen this issue, but issue 12 it didn't really happen yet, so maybe it will next. Like for example, Batman needs to break Bane's back because he said that many times. I think it was just in issue 11, but that was clearly a strong setup for breaking Bane's back, and if that doesn't happen, that would be a big problem, like I would say a big failed setup that didn't pay off. There were some problems that were solved for me in issue 12, and this will get to the redefinition or the reinterpretation of some of Batman's origins. I'll talk about that now. So, I Am Suicide is the storyline, and here we find out why that's the title of the storyline, if you hadn't thought of it already, which is that Batman talks about making that decision to become Batman, and that a lot of it was actually just him wishing to die because his parents were gone, the world had ended, he was just in this very sad place where he didn't see any hope for the future. And he had this anger and he directed it towards being Batman, but really it was kind of a suicidal act because he's like, if I do this thing as Batman, if I put myself into harm's way over and over again, it should kill me. And it's kind of like he's choosing that as a way to die and then kind of join his parents in death and that kind of thing. And so people are having some strong reactions to this. Some of them are being kind of very surprised or giving Tom King a hard time, saying like, whoa, making Batman suicidal is a totally different interpretation of Batman. That was never part of the origin before. He was just angry and was fighting crime and was trying to make a difference. It's not that he was trying to indirectly kill himself. But for me, I think this fits in the large, expansive catalog of Batman stories and explorations of Bruce Wayne's psyche. I think this, is not that far of a stretch. There's been a lot of stories in the past that have talked about Batman as a form of mental illness. Here's this man that does go out into harm's way and he's just a mortal person, or he's wearing this bat suit and fighting crime. And other stories, other creators have explored that idea that, wow, there must be something a little bit off with Batman. Maybe he's kind of similar to some of the villains who are, clearly crazy, but really Batman maybe has a little bit of that craziness himself, or at least mental instability. And so that's been explored, and this to me is just a little bit of a different angle on that same idea that other creators have taken up. Also for me, I saw it coming before with the title I Am Suicide. I was kind of like, oh yeah, I am Suicide. The I is probably Batman, just like I Am Gotham in the first storyline. There was the character named Gotham, but really we find out it's kind of Batman embodying his city. So Batman was the subject of that sentence being Gotham. Here, right when I saw the title, I thought that that's probably Batman being suicide, and so I was already thinking like, oh yeah, Batman, it kind of is suicidal that he goes out and does this and is in such dangerous ways all the time. And so for me, this actually corrects a problem that I had with issue 10, because in issue 10, there are some military folks with good stances aimed right at Batman in the light of day, and they're shooting at him and they just completely miss him, and it seemed very unrealistic for them to have missed Batman at that range. And now, and in this issue, issue 12, you could also say that there's times where, wow, it seems like Batman should have gotten shot. It's kind of unbelievable that he doesn't get shot there. It's not like he's using the shadows, or, it's not like it's just one person who's off balance. So it seems unbelievable that he doesn't get shot, But I think now that that's actually part of the point. I now think that maybe this was the creators having these scenes where Batman should have gotten killed, and the reader is supposed to think like, wow, Batman should be dead, because this is also Batman's mentality. Like, I should be dead. What I'm doing right now as Batman should kill me. This should be my suicide, and yet I'm not dead yet. And that's what he's dealing with here, is like he's not dead yet. So my argument is that we as readers were supposed to think that Batman should die. Batman should have been shot. Because that's what Batman has kind of also been, at least subconsciously, and now he's realizing he was also thinking that I should be dead, I should have been shot by now. The other reason that I'm okay with the suicide angle, a couple reasons. One is Batman writing in this letter to Catwoman, saying that, you know, this is really kind of an act of suicide, indirect suicide. It's not saying that Batman is suicidal 100% of the time, or he's not suicidal every single time he goes out in any sort of mission. He's just realizing that that suicidal thing is maybe part of what's behind it. He does want to help people. He does want to get back at the criminals that took his parents and all of that standard stuff. But maybe part of the mix, part of the reasoning, rationale that's going on, he's realizing is maybe part of it was this kind of just wish to die and be done with all of it, done with the pain and all that. So for me, I'm not taking it as like, oh, his defining characteristic and the only thing that was going on is he's trying to kill himself. I just take it as, oh wow, that's another little piece of a very complicated person, a complicated character. So that's one reason it's okay for me. The other reason that I'm okay with it is that suicide is an issue in our society, and it's one that we really don't talk about and we don't address very much at all. So for creative people to take suicide and make it the subject of a story, I think is worthwhile, and I think it's something that we should be more open to talking about. So for me, it's, you know, kudos to them for taking it on and being willing to take on the flack and the pushback that they're getting from people as well for this story. So those are some of my thoughts on Batman issue 12 and on the I Am Suicide storyline so far. Some people are, you know, very positive on it. Some people are very negative on it. Overall, I think it's a creative enough and a provocative enough story that it's worth reading. Everybody should be reading it. Batman fans should be reading it. So if you see some negative reviews, don't let that dissuade you. I think it's worth checking out, and they're at least trying to do something so we can take that in and see what our personal reaction is to it.